What is the most damage you've ever done with a typo? Adept Adapter said, G and T are very close on the keyboard, and for this reason regards is not my favorite email closing. Smackhead Hipster said, I used to work for a museum booking group visits and educational programs for tour companies and schools. Was working on a reservation and they had only told me how many students were in the group, but I also needed the number of adults. So, I sent an email to the teacher. Hello teacher name, we'll also need to know approximately how many sluts will be visiting from your school. Luckily, they had a sense of humor. Not sure how many of us are sluts, but if you meant adults it's going to be around 8 or 10. Bitter Future said, submitting forms for a job, got a real awkward callback. Did you mean to check this box saying that yes, you've been involved with illegal distribution of controlled substances? Because you checked no on all the other questions about criminal behavior. Nice of the guy to give me a chance to correct it, at least. Fandorin said, it's a 100% rite of passage, but much it's worse when it's to an external party. In most companies there are a lot more controls to move money outside your org, and usually requires 4 eyes authorization. So, you can initiate a transfer, but someone else has to approve. Usually, there are also limits on the amounts you can initiate and how much an approver can release. Funny enough, I was responsible for building these controls at another job. The hard part is to make sure that people actually review what they are inputting and approving and aren't on autopilot. There was a recent case with Citi when someone moved money by accident, and the receiving party didn't send it back. The judge told Citi to fuck off and build better controls. It was a lot of money. Cornelius R. Johnson said, I screwed up a payment request to a vendor that was supposed to be for $3,500 and sent them $35,000 instead. I work for a government agency, so there were 5 physical signatures approving my entry for 100 times the request, and then it was sent to a trustee to actually pay. We found out about the error when the vendor called and asked what the fuck we were doing. Fortunately, the only people who were in any position to yell at me over it were the same 5 who signed it, so I never heard anything of it and just quietly noted to myself that our controls are shit and my stuff needs to be right the first time, and also that a less honest person could commit a shitload of fraud before getting caught. Toothbrush Game said, I worked in the architecture industry for many years. One of the aspects of the job, when we were designing a new building in a community, was to present our plans to the public in a place like a community center or a school gym, and they would be able to voice their concerns. The presentation materials would usually take the form of panels printed on foam core board and placed around the space. These presentations are called public consultations. In one instance, we had printed about 30 boards with the title X Project Public Consultation at the top, only the L had been forgotten in the word public. Hilarity ensued. Luckily the mistake was caught before they placed all the boards, and they were quickly reprinted, which cost a lot of money. If it had been any other letter we would have let it slide. Gorilla Magnet said, I once sent a mass email to senior VPs and C-level execs that I was going to shut down the server cluster over the weekend. A half hour later, a guy stops me in the hallway and tells me that I sent an email to all these big shots that I was going to shut down the server cluster. LOL. I also sent a message where I was asked to look at a problem and sent a message to a bunch of managers and VPs that I would investigate things, except that it said that I would investigate thongs. LOL. Whoever put the U, I, and O keys next to each other on a QWERTY keyboard, well played. This is the best practical joke ever devised. Aggressive Good 2217 said, a friend who was an immigrant said he was asked, do you plan to assassinate the President of the USA? I said, why would anyone say yes to that? He said he thought it was so they could quickly deport him for lying on his immigration form if he was caught plotting to assassinate the president, but they couldn't actually prove criminal charges. B, so they'd be able to say, we asked, and he said no. If he did assassinate the president, and C, to weed out people so delusional that they would say yes, like the Nigerian prince scam, where they make the offer intentionally implausible so that skeptical people never waste their time in the first place. A list of things I had said. Once when I was about 14-15 I was working for an art gallery and the owner had me write a happy birthday email to her friend. In hindsight, that's pretty weird, but anyway. I accidentally wrote "Happy Birthday Dead Christina" instead of "Dear," and when Christina responded, it was clear that she found the typo humorous. My boss, however, did not, and she flipped out on me and made me cry over it. She then had me write an apology email explaining things like who I was, how old I was, and where I went to school. That was over a decade ago, and looking back, everything about that was super inappropriate. I was very happy to stop working there. Victoria said, I've posted my own worst one, but worst, or weirdest, I've seen was from my father. His texts are legendarily awful, but he outdid himself. He accidentally sent a text message to himself that was a random jumble of letters, asking the lines of fault. He then thought my mother had sent him this text. He was meant to be meeting her at a cafe. He decided this entirely random text he had sent himself must be a new restaurant, and she decided to meet him there instead. He spent ages looking for this restaurant. He decided it might be an Indian restaurant. He got very annoyed when he couldn't find it. He eventually went to where they were meant to meet, late and grouchy, and complained to my mother, who was patiently waiting in the right place, about her doing this to him. He refused to accept. He sent the message. My mother's not good with technology, but correctly pointed out it was clearly showing as his side of the conversation on both their phones. He's still a bit annoyed and defensive about it. He's not horrible, just grouchy. And an idiot. They are divorced but get on well. People constantly mistake them for an adorable old couple, which is hilarious. No, the Red said. For a bit, I ran a WoW guild. I don't recommend it, but whatever. Anyhow, we had a small raid team and were mildly successful, making progress in mech and such. Our core raid group was maybe 20-25 folks, and the other 15-20 slots would get filled with pretty much anyone that could fog a mirror without breaking it. You know, standard vanilla 40-man raiding. Well, as these things typically go, people came and went, and occasionally we had someone who came but didn't really bring enough to the table, or worse, they continually wiped the entire table by pulling ants during Baron Jet and by being an idiot. So I had to kick occasionally. I didn't enjoy it, but heavy is the head that wears the crown or something. In one such scenario, I had to kick a player from the guild that just was an all-around fuckhead. Aside from the raid wipes and subpar performance overall, he was also just kind of an abrasive person to be around, so he had to go. Now, the problem that arose was that his character name was remarkably close to someone else's, the main tank. Our main tank was a great tank, but also a bit of a drama queen, and also more or less the leader of a clique within the guild that was made up of folks from a guild we merged absorbed at some point prior. You can see where this is going. No, the Red said. So I type out Kick Harold, when I meant to type Kick Harold, not the actual names, but the difference between them was that minor. Cue a massive shitstorm of drama that ended up destroying the entire guild within like 5 hours. MT was on an alt and unleashed a torrent of insults about me, the other leadership, etc. You know, the type of stuff you can't unsay after the person you said them to explains it was a typo, dude. He left, as did almost all of the folks that came with him. Then the Fairweather Raiders left to go to other guilds. Then the OGs started dropping too, since you don't recover from something like this quickly. By that evening, almost the entire core raid team was gone, most of the leadership was gone, and I was already shooting whispers to friends about who needed a resto shaman. Also, the guy who I intended to kick from the guild ended up in the same guild I did, briefly, but he was kicked from there. The Muddy Wolf said. I was 18. Just starting college, and embarrassingly, this was my first plunge into dating. High school was dry for me. I really liked this girl. She was smart, pretty, sarcastic, dark-humored, and we liked the same music. We hit it off almost instantly, and it was really nice. We were texting back and forth, and she suddenly asked me, "What do you want from a girl?" I meant to reply orally, starting with the important questions. For those of you who don't know, orale is a slang word in Spanish, typically spoken in Mexico in as many uses. In this case, I wanted to use it to show her I was surprised she showed romantic interest first. Well, it turns out my old BlackBerry didn't know I was Mexican and decided it knew better and auto-corrected my text for me. The text exchange went something like this. Her, so, what do you want from a girlfriend? Me, oral. Neon Babylon said. Me? Not much. But this story is too good not to share, so my apologies, but I think this time it's worth it. My dad was part owner of a casino when I was a kid. There was an ad that went out that contained the word bigger, and as we all realized with the much bigger Navy incident a few years ago, the B on a standard keyboard is next to the N. Yeah, my dad was not happy. He fired a guy who was supposed to proofread the ads, which I think we can all agree was justified. Durtaye said, I work in construction and have to regularly coordinate with building management for access to places, think 60-story and up Manhattan skyscrapers size of building and level of people. I needed access to a fire pump room that we called the pump room for short. My email subject was asking for access to the pimp room. The manager responded by thanking me for installing such a fun-sounding room since he never heard of it before in his building, and the chief engineer replied that it was the room that had lots of hoes in it. Thankfully they were a fun group of guys and we all laughed our asses off, but what a stupid typo. Abhishaklupsi said, one of my professor from university was very strict and she would reduce marks if assignments were late, even for minutes. I had experience in past where I submitted the assignment but forgot to hand in Google Classroom where you upload the assignment but there is an extra button to hand in to teacher. For one of such assignments I was back home and about to catch a train for an overnight journey to college, so I had to submit the assignment that night before I go to station. I was in a hurry but somehow managed to submit the assignment on time. Fast forward, reached college the next day. Everyone was talking about who all submitted in time and all. Proud me who submitted it in time just opened it in Google Classroom to send it to my friends. I froze for a moment because the heading was experiment in bold, font size 16 as heading. In hurry I pressed Ctrl+S a couple of times but somehow an extra S came in front of experiment. Sport for Pedro said, it wasn't me but my former district manager. We had a big event coming up and he's all about the pump-up email to encourage the team. He was always a bit cliché and cheesy but had a good heart. In this pump-up email he talked about how great the event was going to be and hidden in the middle was a bit about collateral, but instead of the word collateral he wrote collateral. In an email that got sent not only to all of the stores in the district but he had also CC'd our regional and HR managers. None of the general managers were brave enough to mention it to him but there were plenty of phone calls between stores. To Generic said, the classic from history is this one. In the 1870s, a good portion of the federal government income came from tariffs on imported goods. A list of items free from tariff was supposed to include fruit plants tropical and semi-tropical for the purpose of propagation or cultivation. But it came out in the printed law as fruit plants tropical and semi-tropical for the purpose of propagation or cultivation. So all imported tropical fruit was free from duty, after some wrangling and lawsuits, until Congress passed a correction bill. It cost the government millions of 1870s dollars, a lot of money. All due to an error by the copying clerk. https://www.businessinsider.com/this-typo-cost-america-about-40-million-2015-1. Prometheus aborted said, my grandma had just learned how to text, with the help of my aunt, and she texts all her kids and grandkids on their birthdays holidays. We have a huge family so she really enjoys it. On my birthday a couple years ago, she sent me a happy birthday text and we talked for a bit. She mentioned how hurricane narrowly missed her house the other day and I wanted to reply with that's some good luck, Grandma, but of course my stupid brain wrote fuck instead out of habit. I didn't even notice and she didn't respond so I forgot about it. A few days later my mom texted me and asked me to please watch my language, since my grandma is very religious. When I pulled up the convo with my grandma I was mortified. It may not seem like a huge deal to some of you but boy did I feel awful and embarrassed that my poor sweet grandma thought I was swearing at her. Obviously I apologized and we cleared it up but still. In a field is empty said, I worked at a small gas station in 2006. When we changed the gas price it was a small keypad with no screen or anything. We had to type in the gas price plus like 18 zeros behind it. Well, one day I missed a couple zeros and set the gas price to $0.26 gal instead of $2.60 gal. We didn't notice until a regular customer came in a few hours later and told us the pumps were showing $0.26. We didn't lose a lot because something happened that shut the pumps down. You forget what. It happened often though, but one dude had been sitting there waiting hours for the pumps to come back on and get his cheap gas. We fixed the price before the pumps came back on and this dude threw a fit, so the manager gave him a $50 gas voucher to make him go away. A guy 21 said, "When I was in college I wanted to work in the sports industry and got an internship working at the local high school sports organization. This was in the early years of live streaming games, and as such my boss got the idea that I might post a play-by-play of our basketball championships by typing out the plays into a message board. So imagine watching a basketball game and attempting to articulate what is happening by typing things out. Not easy as you can imagine. That was me, for 6 games in one day. Amazingly, we have thousands of people tuning into my posts to see what was going on. So about halfway through the 3rd game my boss comes running up to me with a stern look on his face. He shows me a post I had made. This is what I intended to write: Jones from the corner shot is short. Except I missed the O and shot and hit the letter directly to the left of it on your keyboard. I was given a stern warning and probably would have been fired if it weren't for the fact that no one else was going to be made to type all that out." Hola Smoke 532 said, "One time in FFXIV a few years ago, I was healing a dungeon with my fiancé. I told, well intended to tell, the tank, who seemed nice and newish, that I would be fine keeping them alive if they gather up extra enemies. The exact phrase I used was feel free to pull bigger. Except, I did not say that. Instead, I learned that B and N are next to each other on a keyboard. I'll let you figure that out." Throughout a lot of apologies in this same explanation for a little while there, and I'm very impressed that I didn't just shame Alt plus F4 afterwards. The rest of the dungeon was uneventful. ALC0th said, "In Argentina we have a worked for a person who is very good at what they do, but it is a really bad word to say to somebody in English. The word is crack. In Argentina, if you say you're a crack is a friendly and confident way to say you're very good at what you do to someone. One of my colleagues, we work in a software factory with people from the client's team in the USA, said, 'Chuck, you're a crack.' To the UX designer, the guy is super friendly and we instantly explained to him, but I can't stop laughing imagining the face the guy made when my colleague said, 'Chuck, you're a drug addict.'" Death by Bamboo said, "Once, when I was a junior web developer, I was committing the cardinal sin of developing on the live database on a site with an active community of around 100k people at any one time. I was trying to delete a record that was causing some problems, because it wasn't escaped properly on input, which wasn't my error, and in the where clause of the query, I neglected to include the correct limit. I deleted the entire comment database for the forums. Luckily we had a backup, but it was 15 minutes old at that point. Don't work on the live database, kids." Relentless Shrew said, "Back in college, I worked on the school newspaper. We were holding up production to get a theater review. This was back in the day when typesetting machines only showed one line of text on the screen. I typed up the review, printed it and pasted it to the master copy, like I said, way back in the day. The copy editor reviewed and the issue was sent to the printers. Fast forward to the next day when an irate man came into the newspaper office claiming we ruined his life. He thought we were mocking him on purpose. And that, my friends, is how Bob Butts became forevermore known as Bobo Butts. I feel bad about to this day." Talia said, "Not mine, but this one got multiple points. With a digital cinema system most sites will program a basic operating macro. With our client base they use the name Start Show, and it contains a bunch of basic commands like cut audio over to the correct system, open the projector dowser, set automation to partially open curtains, etc, etc. So it's a pretty goddamn vital macro, and it's included at the start of every show playlist, including those generated by automated theater management systems. We had a site where the shows weren't running right in one of their theaters. They had to constantly manually trigger the pre-show command set, so I logged on and checked over the macros. Someone had mistyped it as Shart Show." I don't slip it just Cree said, "I don't understand how people can't just proofread, especially for important things such as emails to bosses, co-workers, job applications, etc. All of these could have been avoided with just a quick reread of the message form, and wouldn't have taken more than a minute for most. Lesson to take away: proofread. Doesn't matter if you're behind on something, or in a rush, or tired, always just try your best to do at least one quick run through what you've written. The potential damage you can prevent is well worth losing a bit of time over. Daddy O 1966 said. At work. Large aerospace company. We had an in-house chat program, Link I think. I had just sent a message to a man that was standing in for my boss, who was on vacation. On my other monitor I had a window open for signing into something else. That other screen was asking for my password, which happened to be asshole69. I was looking at the monitor when I typed in my password and hit return. I hadn't moved my cursor from the chat window, still open with my acting boss. I immediately felt all of the blood rush to my head. I sent an apology and explained what had happened. Before I had a chance to send the explanation and accompanying apology, he showed up at my cubicle with a bright red face, and 2 other bosses in tow. They saw the look on my face and all burst out laughing very loud. Huge relief and lesson learned. Bo Peep Sheep said. Not very bad in the scheme of things, but when I was in hospital being treated for DKA, I texted my partner to say I'd been diagnosed with type 3C diabetes, pancreatogenic, the kind you get after trauma to the pancreas. As I'd not long had an up for pancreatic cancer, this made sense to me. Unfortunately my phone corrected T3C to T3. When my partner and my family Googled this, it told them I had Alzheimer's. T3 has multiple variants, mostly unrelated to each other, and one of them does indeed seem to be linked to changes in the brain as Alzheimer's kicks in. As I'd been sky high for weeks running up to the DKA, I had indeed been forgetful, muddled, confused, and erratic. Dementia in one's late 40s is not impossible. They were very relieved when they finally got to see me and hear the real diagnosis. Chicabo Toes said. Not a typo, but I'd been sending Link's pics of adult toys my BF while we were trying to spice things up, one day. I failed to copy something else later, when I was doing things with the MMO guild we both co-lead. I dropped a photo of a very adventurous sex toy in my Discord after trying to post a diagram of fight mechanics, so of course, along with posting the photo, I just said I'm posting the diagram in Discord. Go look at it, and that entire Discord call of 720-something men got to see what their guildmaster is into behind closed doors. Bless them all for keeping their mouths shut and not saying a damn thing for the few seconds it took me to realize I'd not pasted the right thing. It's Frankenstein said. In high school, I was heavily into theater, and I scored a role as Inspector Clouseau in The Return of the Pink Panther. My parents were stoked about a lead role, so my dad wanted to take off of work to see me perform and get a tape recording of our opening night. Our school had just renovated the theater, so my parents wanted to get seats early to secure optimal recording angles. All this to say, about an hour before the curtains came up, I got a text from my mother asking where should your dad sit so he can be in the best spot to rape you. H. Smy said. I can't verify this, but it's a story I heard during corporate training. In America, groupings of digits are separated by commas, with a period indicating fractions. Thus, 1,234.56 is written $1,234.56. In Europe, the convention is opposite, so the same amount would be 1.23456. Keep that background in mind. A US company made a contract with a European company for $70 million, written in the contract as $70 million. But the European company interpreted that as $70, with a lot of zeros as fractional parts, because separated dollars from cents. It led to a big lawsuit. After that, all contracts included language such as this contract is for $70 million. If there is a discrepancy between the written amount and the digits, the written amount takes precedence. Salsa Stark said. I worked for a home decor store that had a special discount program for interior designers who wanted to partner with us. One day a designer in this program came in and was asking me questions about the benefits of his account with us. He was a friendly and charming guy, also very flamboyant. We walked over to the computer and I asked him his last name so I could pull his account up. He said it was Fleming. I type fast and my accuracy isn't great. I put his name in the search, and his expression immediately went sour. He said, "It's Fleming, with an E." I looked at the screen and realized my stupid fingers had typed Flaming. I corrected it and apologized profusely, but he just shook his head and said, "Never mind, I'll look it up from home," and left. Easily the most unfortunate typo of my life. CRL Minimentality said, "When I was about 12 years old, I was texting my friends about this guy named who deeply pissed me off. And this guy was related to one of my friends, keep that in mind. At one point during the conversation, I stated I wanted to kick his balls, and due to my old-ass phone, I would always mistype. I wasn't looking at what I was typing, and Kick had auto-corrected for lick. Needless to say, my friend that was related to him told him what I had said, and my parents found out as well. I'm not longer allowed to talk to him, nor do I want to.